first of all, I'd like to welcome you all to our event, A Night of Enlightenment, Drone Warfare. What I want to start off with today is to actually restate the mission of the Arab Student Association. So for those of you who don't know, the Arab Student Association actually started off in 2011 by a passionate student named Rana Usman, and her mission was to unite the Arabs here at VCU. So our goal is to serve the Arab community on campus while promoting the Arab culture and heritage, and by doing so, what we're doing, of course, is adding to the diversity of VCU and increasing public awareness about the Arab world. So the ASA, of course, had a variety of cultural events. With your help, they were successfully able to unite both Arabs and non-Arabs. This year, we decided it's time to enhance our role in increasing public awareness by holding not necessarily a political event, but an event that impacts people all over the Middle East and here in the United States. So when the Fafal Wazir, last year's ASA president, she's right there just in case you guys don't know her, she came up to me and she told me, we should do an event about drones, and she was so excited. So my initial reaction was like, okay, how does this girl always have good ideas, And of course, that's one thing I like about the Fafal, is that she still till today helps out with the Arab Student Association. So from then on, I brought up the idea to our president, Hind Khalifa, and the rest of our board members, and we thought like, okay, we should make this event happen, of course. So one question I know I've been asked about this a lot, and a lot of our members were asked, okay, so why drones in particular? There's so many other issues happening around the Middle East. So one thing I want to bring to you guys' attention is that we actually had a variety of events. It was last year, I believe, we had a protest about Palestine. It was in solidarity with Gaza, and that was actually one of the largest rallies and protests that happened in VCU. We had a large turnout. Not only Arabs, but non-Arabs came, so that was, of course, really great. Last semester, we had a fundraiser for adopted children, which our amazing president, Hind Khalifa, worked as hard as she could to make this event happen, and of course with the help of the Tigris and Euphrates organization and everyone who attended, we were able to raise $3,000, actually a little bit more than $3,000, towards the Pay Unto War Coalition. So for tonight, what I want to do is I'm not going to sit here and tell you why we chose drones, but I want you all, after this event, I'm sure that you guys are all going to understand why we chose this topic in specific, and I'm going to give it to our amazing speakers to let you know. So over here to my right, we have Walid Sami, who's a graduate student at Wake Forest, a VCU alumni, and our very own former ASA treasurer. We have Al Wazir, who's a freelance researcher, writer, and correspondent who has come all the way from Sana'a, Yemen. And we have David Swanson. That correctly? Okay. So he's currently working to organize a movement to end war at worldbeyondwar.org and has been working with Code Pink for many years. We were also supposed to have a speaker come from Amnesty International, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it. But we do have an organization, Amnesty International at VCU, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So, we'd like to start off with our speaker, Walid Sami, who's going to give us more of an insight on drones, in particular in Pakistan. So give him a hand, please.
Good evening, distinguished students, faculty, and our guests. I'd like to thank the ASA for getting in contact with me and thinking I'm worthy enough to speak on the weighty and relevant topic of drone strikes and drone warfare. I'm not a scholar in international warfare nor a journalist. What I can offer as context and analysis simply comes from my observations and amateur research. I sincerely hope that I can communicate some sort of information to y'all about today, about drone warfare, its modern politics, specifically its impact on Pakistan, which is where I'm from ancestrally. I know she said I was a former treasurer of the ASA, but since the ASA is so diverse, they decided to put Pakistani as the treasurer the first year we run it. And so that just shows the the pluralism that's in the ASA here at VCU. I'd like to start off first with something a bit tangential, but I hope it does have a point. Robert H. Gunhamstead, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, wrote a strong book a long time ago, about 34 years ago, called Steamboats and the Rise of the Cotton Kingdom. He was a historian, and I know history is boring to most of you guys, but I love it because we tend to see patterns in our common history. And we realize that certain themes tend to emerge. So listen carefully to this little passage I selected from the book for you guys. On December 16, 1811, in the midst of the maiden voyage of the aptly Christian New Orleans, the first steamboat to navigate the Mississippi River, the ground began to tremble. The largest earthquake ever recorded east of the Rockies destroyed the town of New Madrid, brought down chimneys in Louisville and woke up people as far away as Quebec in Canada. The OM was appropriate by forever reversing the directional logic of Western river transportation. Then New Orleans, which is the steamboat in question, and her thousands of bigger, stronger, faster successors contributed to the economic and social transformation of the area as vast as shaken by the legendary earthquake. Now he's talking about steamboats, and he's talking about how steamboats are very important and how their technology, about a couple of hundred years ago, was considered revolutionary in terms of military warfare and how to expand power. All this, specifically the steamboats, is explored the Mississippi River here in America. And through that, the rise of the slave trade, cotton trade was felt very strongly. Conversely, Kwon Tobin describes the colonization of Congo and Africa, and he says that the Congo, there's its entire river basin is drained on an area larger than the country of India. And through that, steamboats navigated through the entire area, and through that they subjugated and colonized, the diverse amount of people. There were over 500 languages spoken in the Congo at that time. And all this was done through the power of steamboats. And just as steamboats were an expression of power, so are drones. And just as the Congo, was, important in the slave trade, in the colonization, and steamboats helped colonize such a diverse population, so do drones, in a sense. Drones are kind of the modern military expression of colonization, of destruction, of warfare. So it's no different. They're of course the same thing. They're used the same way as steamboats and drones. So they're used to project power, and they're in our generation's weapon of choice in order to colonize and win battles over the same disputed lands that were in occupation a couple centuries ago. Tariq Ali, a famous historian, and said history does not repeat itself, it echoes. So when the drone flies over Pakistan or anywhere else, history is echoing. Before that, it was the musket. Before that, it was the cannon. Before that, it was the knight on horseback. Drones simply represent an evolution of warfare. And who knows what will be in about 100 years. However, in order to learn more about drones, we have to examine why they're used as a weapon of choice by the superpowers today. And we have to educate ourselves on what they do. Because, in my opinion, drones represent aggressive and preemptive war, which I think we should all be against. So we look at drones and tanks as modern weapons that represent our age, but why does one country choose to deploy a tank? And why does one country choose to deploy a drone? Why are there American drones in Pakistan and not American tanks? Well, think of what a tank represents. A tank cannot exist without logistics. It cannot exist without someone supplying fuel to it, without radar, without food, and for its full-man crew. It cannot exist without a general plotting its warpath. It cannot exist without an army to take over its territory. A drone offers none of these issues. It can swoop in, it can kill somebody, it can get out of there. This is why a drone is marketed as a more humanitarian version of war, just as the guillotine was marketed as a more humanitarian version of the execution. But execution is an execution. Drone is warfare, and it's warfare. It does not matter if it comes from the sky. It does not matter if it's mustard gas or anything of that matter. Now, the mainstream left is very silent on this case because they've been kind of sold this idea that drones are humanitarian war. The mainstream left tends to be kind of anti-imperialist and, anti-war, but they've been kind of silent, perhaps because Obama's president or any of these kind of hypothetical reasons and suggestions. There's not been a lot of debate about drone warfare. A lot of people have just accepted it as kind of the better alternative to land invasions. But when you think about land invasions and land occupations, note how there's only two options given in our current discussions. We can only invade as a country and occupy, or we can only send drone strikes and silent assassination campaigns. There's no third option given. There's no diplomacy. There's no preemptive aggressive warfare. There's no new process. It's either, with the Bush era, you choose massive regime changes in occupations of country and thousands of American soldiers, thousands of civilians dead, or you choose drone strikes, assassination campaigns, with little damage to American assets, except as we see a lot of civilian casualties, which can be just given as collateral. Very little American lives in danger. An unmanned carrier that can selectively take out individuals deemed a threat across the world without putting U.S. soldier at risk is a godsend for our country, in search of answers after disastrous wars. But the implications of a drone coming in without due process and killing somebody is very frightening because it can happen to us. Right now it's seen overseas, it's not to people overseas, so a lot of people say, oh, it's whatever, it's dead people in Pakistan, it's dead people in Yemen, it doesn't really matter. Eventually, this technology will get turned on to us, and drones kind of represent the new frontier of military technology. They'll be used in policing and investigations. It's a very efficient machine. There's no arguing against it. That's what it's used so well. And this is why we hold these kind of forums. That's why Amy Goodman and Jervis Cahill, two very prominent journalists, have investigated drones, have raised awareness about drones, because they say there's never before been a technology that can kind of swoop in and carry out executions and get out of there without there being due process. At least when you execute somebody, you've got to put them on trial, you've got to do something. There's none of that required for drones. This has frightening implications for all of us. Again, they've not decided to go away from warfare. They have not decided to go away from occupational warfare. They're not decided to go away from warfare to protect our security, our trade security, our national security as they see fit. They decide to simply reform the warfare and put it in terms of drones instead of tanks and occupations and stuff like that. The tremendous damage in Pakistan to civilian and cultural life is proven catastrophic, and it's creating an entire generation of people who use drones to scare the kids instead of monsters. Can you imagine this? People in the tribal areas of Pakistan, the mothers there, how most of the moms will kind of scare you to go to sleep by saying, oh, the bogeyman's going to come get you. Drones are so traumatic and so part of life in certain parts of Pakistan that the mothers instead point to the sky and say, the drone's going to come get you if you don't go to sleep. And if you think about it, all of us were raised with monsters, right? But if you can imagine a drone ready to kill you at any moment, it's no longer a monster in your dreams. It's something you can just look up to the sky and hear. It's very scary. I can't imagine, I don't know if some of you guys are parents, but some of you may eventually be parents, but telling your kids that there's a drone that can get you out, so you better go to sleep, or you better hide, you better do what I tell you, is pretty scary as a parent, as a society. So for most of my understanding, the drone war in Pakistan, I relied on the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, an independent news agency from the UK, which has won several awards for the coverage of the drone war. And the entire organization has been nominated for the British Journalism Awards. To date, here are some of the rough statistics of the drone warfare in Pakistan, which has been overseen by the CIA so far. This is just the statistics compiled by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. Many different bureaus have different ideas. There's no clear-cut authority. Strikes in Pakistan launched by the CIA, they've been going on since 2004, so right about now. Total documented strikes by the Bureau, 381. Obama has launched 330 of those 381 strikes. That is because he has a direct escalation of the war in Afghanistan has led to kind of a falling out across the region, which means he has to employ more drone strikes and more drone strikes. Total rough estimates of the civilians killed between 500 and 1,000. Children killed about 200. Innocent injured about 1,200 to 1,600. Many other observers from Pakistan and other observers from outside and journalists have reported death tolls to be much higher, specifically on the civilian side. The leaked Pakistani internal document has come to light recently, claiming civilian deaths to be much higher than the CIA ever admits. Over 100 dead children were reported over the last couple of years, so half the children that have been reported have died within the last couple of years, which is pretty catastrophic. After years of these drone strikes, President Obama made a speech last year at Fort McNair on May 23rd, I believe, laying out what his take on the program is and the constraints he was imposing on it. And he says, I quote, to say a military tactic is legal or even effective is not to say it is wise or moral in every instance. I agree with the President. However, Micah Zenko of the Council of Foreign Relations has said there is no evidence that the administration has discontinued its most nefarious and shadowy policy of signature strikes in Pakistan. Signature strikes are those strikes that take out not only the intended target, but all those around him. When Bush was president, he implemented the signature strike policy.